Hey, this is part 2 of the video. I want to pick up a little bit where we left off. Again, I've put into our materials an example of Exodus chapter 1 verses 6 and 7. So I'd like you to follow along with that and review that. This is in addition to that to try to make sense of that. Because what I've done there essentially is I've gone word by word and then in some cases phrase by phrase and used the categories in Arnold Choi with reference to English translations to give you, to label how different words are being translated in English. And I don't just mean the translation piece. What we're talking about is, like, for example, with prepositions. Let's take the preposition, for example, bait, which is always attached to another word. But if you remember from OT 501, when you learned the meaning of bait, like on a quiz, it was one of those easy words because you could put just about any English preposition and it was going to be right, if you remember. So bait can mean in, with, by, on, after, all kinds of different options. But learning it that way would be a mistake because it can mean all those different things depending on the context in which it's used. That's the key thing. So grammatical analysis is about analyzing the possibilities that a particular word can have, and I'm talking about its grammar, and then listing out based on the context what are the legitimate possibilities that it could mean. Because it can't mean anything, and it's not going to ever mean all the things. And that's the key thing. Ultimately, exegesis at its rock bottom core is this. Explore all possibilities, and then, based on the context and the available evidence, decide which of those possibilities is most probably what the word means or the idea means in this particular text. Okay? So explore all possibilities, then based on evidence, decide which of those possibilities is most probable as the correct one. Okay, so in grammatical analysis, we're not really about trying to decide which one is the best. I want you to see options where they exist. So you're going to want to note things like, well, this English translation has above, this English translation had with. Well, what's the different connotations between those words? So this is going to teach us to read really carefully and closely and not pass over things that we may have taken for granted in previous times. So again, review that document on Exodus 1, 6, and 7 carefully. And I'm going to assume that you're going to look at that. So maybe even stop this video now and go have a look at that, that document. Okay. All right. Welcome back if you had to pause. Also make sure you have your Arnold Choi book with you again, because I'm going to reference just again that table of contents. Because I'm going to ask you in this assignment, we're going to look at Exodus chapter 1, verses 8 and 9, and then 11. We're going to skip verse 10 because it has some tricky issues that we really don't want to mess with in this for this assignment. It'll be in my notes when I give you a review. But I'm asking you to do grammatical analysis for next week on chapter 1, verse 8, verse 9, and verse 11. And I want you to analyze all the nouns, all the verbs, all the prepositional phrases. Let's start with prepositional phrases since we have one listed up here just to start with. Now, when you're looking at a prepositional phrase has a preposition, and then there's going to be some noun or pronoun, and it could be a phrase, more than one here. That's even have adjectives, and the noun is the object of the preposition. So we have the preposition, then we're going to have the preposition's object. Now, in grammatical analysis, when we say I analyze the prepositions, I mean the prepositional phrases. So one label does the whole thing. So essentially you're asking is, what does the preposition, how does the preposition help us to understand the function of this noun? Is it with? Is it of? And of might say possession. By can be agency, right? In is location. Those are some of the categories that you'll find when you look at Arnold Choi. And so if you have your Arnold Choi book with you, let me introduce you to where the prepositional phrase analysis stuff is. It's going to be in 4.1. You'll have all the prepositions that are listed there, or at least most of them. Again, by the way, there'll be a couple times this semester, not this week, where you won't find a preposition listed because it's too low frequency. Then you can just look it up in your lexicon and you can infer the categories based on what we've already done. But most of the major, where all the major prepositions are listed here, and the preposition bait is 4.1.5. And if you go there, you're going to see a list, actually a fairly lengthy list, of all the different connotations depending on your context that the bait can have. And that's going to affect how it gets translated. So you want to actually go and look and try to give a label for the preposition based on how you see it functioning in the English translations. And then if you want to, I'm not asking you this, you can go ahead and list 2 or 3 different options based on how you see it being translated in English translations. Now sometimes there's no variance in the English translations, and that just tells you pretty much everybody agrees, and you just give the label. Again, labeling isn't going to profoundly alter your understanding of every text, but you're going to be surprised in both Old Testament and New Testament. A lot of exegesis comes down to, back to that Bill Clinton question. What's the meaning of some little itty-bitty word? What's the meaning of the bait? What's the force of this genitive? How precisely is this past narrative verb being translated? And again, Arnold Choi gives us categories. By the way, one more thing about the Arnold Choi book. When you have all kinds of options listed, in general, Arnold Choi goes from the most common use to the least common use. So a lot of times you'll be dealing with the first set of categories. A lot of times some of the other categories are subcategories, so just learn to use that, and if you have questions you can raise those in the course of our class conversation. So again, prepositions are going to be 4.1. Your verbal materials are going to be in section 3, and I'm going to cover that in the next video.